Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Open Forum podcast. Today we have with us, I'm excited to say, Elana Freeland, an expert in one of my favorite areas, having done decades of research in this space to better understand what is happening in the world around us, geoengineering. And if you don't know what that is, you may be familiar with a tiny element of it, chemtrails. And if you're unfamiliar with either of those things, prepare to have your minds blown. Elana has released multiple books on the topic. Currently, she's currently working on releasing her fourth one. She's been a lecturer, a writer, a teacher, a ghostwriter, and also having helped survivors of things like MK Ultra bring their stories to the fore with people such as Billy Hayes, aka the HAARP man, who I'm sure will come across in today's conversation. If you're under the guise that geoengineering just pertains to the weather, then think again, as it enables militaries the globe over to weaponize our atmosphere through both manipulation as well as the DEWs, direct energy weapons, and so much more. That, Elana, that is a very brief introduction to yourself. Can you maybe take 1 or 2 minutes, tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we're going to dive on in. Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thanks, Sonny. I have been in this now for 13 years. And it's hard for me to believe that, but discovery is like that when you're writing books. You know a little bit when you start out, and then you learn more through your research, and then that research gives birth to a whole other realm of research because you've now uncovered a few layers that you didn't know existed before. Now you're on to the next layers in the next book. And then you discover yet more, and you're on to the next book. You see how it goes. I mean, you think that, why would someone write 4 books on this? Well, each of the books, other than this last one, really has to do with my level of discovery going on. I really had no idea when I started that there were so many programs going on under this classified thing called geoengineering. I mean, you hear that it's about solar radiation management. You hear that it's about ameliorating climate change and global warming. Because the media is so skewed now and so bent, it doesn't even, I certainly don't read mainstream media. I don't want to do the work of figuring out how much is true, which is very minimal, and how much is completely a lie. So I have to pick and choose through. I mean, I'm pretty well known around the world, in at least in the West. So a lot of people send me a lot of things. So I make my way through that, and I find out things from other people. It's like I have a very big research team. Yeah. And we're all researching a classified project that you'd be surprised how much of that classified project is revealed in a variety of places on the internet. But you have to have the discernment to know the difference between the lie and the shade of gray, and what papers mean what and what patents mean what. So, it's been a huge learning experience. I'm very grateful for, but I have become more and more concerned because I see now how crucial it is to so many other things that activists are pursuing. I mean, just one example would be 5G. 5G is involved in this. Synthetic biology is involved in this. Surveillance is involved in this. Mind control is involved in this. I mean, it's far, far beyond just controlling the weather, which, by the way, is absolutely controlled now. It is all run by AI. And like this latest storm in Istanbul, I was just looking at, that is definitely a geoengineered storm, no question in my mind. So,
Well, there
I'd
was
like,
the earthquakes that happened in Istanbul earlier this year, wasn't there? The earthquakes that just
yes,
happened to coincide with the
yes,
moment when Turkey was supposed to be hosting Russia and Ukraine to be having peace talks. Suddenly, we have earthquakes with multiple epicenters in a way that hadn't been seen before. An amazing graphic about that I'll see if I can try and find and add back into this afterwards. But no, absolutely. I mean, we can go back to the Vietnam War with Operation Popeye, where the US were utilizing cloud seeding in order to prolong the monsoon season in Vietnam, in both North and South Vietnam. This goes back decades, and yeah, like you said, so much of this is in the open. Many people will outright say, geoengineering, cloud seeding, weather manipulation, it's all rubbish, it's all bunk. But here we have genuine documentation from the US government, no less, talking about operations that they did back in the Vietnam War. So that's what, the 60s to early 70s. If they had that technology then, if people think for 1 second they're not going to progress and use that further, Lyndon B. Johnson in 1962, as vice president, gave a speech where he said, we have weather satellites that are capable of controlling the cloud layer. And he who controls the weather, or which is then capable in turn of controlling the weather, and he who controls the weather controls the world.
It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
You think when he was saying that in 62 and they did those experiments in Vietnam over the late 60s, early 70s, that they were going to give that up? You'd have to get me up pretty early in the morning to believe that.
yes. And I think one of the ways they've hidden it in the open is by keeping people distracted with a variety of other things, even good things. I don't mean to berate them because they're important, like activists who pursue letting people know about how bad 5G is for your nervous system. That's super important. But what I've found is that this context of geoengineering is the big elephant in the living room, and it isn't just because of the weather. That in itself is very important, and I can explain if you would like how that is done, how you control weather systems, and then the difference between weather and climate, because they also control the climate, certainly with an AI system.
I think it's a fair point, but before we even talk about the ability to control weather through geoengineering, maybe it's a good idea for the uninitiated if you could go over what geoengineering is, what that entails, and then we can talk about weather, climate, chemtrails, things like that.
Right, because the geoengineering is not the same thing as cloud seeding. Cloud seeding is a minor part of geoengineering, but it's still going on, and it's still important, but it's much larger. Now, I have a definition up here on my wall that I really like. I mean, it's short, and I can tease it out. Intentional manipulation of global scale Earth system processes. And that's really what it is. So I'll say it again. Intentional, that's a very important word, manipulation of global scale Earth system processes. So you take a variety of things. That's why the subtitle of my latest book, the third book, is so long. Geoengineered transhumanism, how the environment has been weaponized by chemicals, electromagnetism, and nanotechnology for synthetic biology. And that's, you're taking several very large systems and you're putting them all at the disposal of an aerosol system that can be regional, it can be almost individual, or it can be very vast, as weather systems can be, because if you control the jet stream, which the United States military does control the jet stream, then you can move that weather system anywhere you want in the world, even over other nations where you have no right to be there in their sky space.
Yeah.
But you can affect their weather systems, and they will still, as long as it's secret to some degree, which it is, through plausible deniability, you can assume that it is climate change. And that's really the purpose of the story of climate change and global warming, is those are cover stories. They are complete lies, except in the fact that there has been climate change. It has been changed. And there is warming that goes on.
It's changed expressly by us, not through incidental burning of hydrocarbon fuels or anything like that.
Exactly.
I think
intentionally, it's been intentionally changed.
Intentionally changed. I think there's a couple little bits there. One thing is what you said about controlling the weather over far off places. Now, if we just look at the local level of that, if let's say they wanted to make it rain here in Amsterdam, or let's take a real life example that everyone is aware of at this point, Dubai and their cloud seeding. What an inherent problem with that cloud seeding is it's going to have knock-on effects for their neighbors. It's going to have knock-on effects to the atmosphere surrounding that area. Because what it is, whether they're using aluminium iodide or something else in order to cause the crystallization of the water in forming ice and whatnot, and then in order to cause precipitation, this is all potentially dangerous stuff as it comes back down to earth. But then if we look at, I know Iran's not the most trustworthy country in the world, but the former Iranian president was on the floor of the UN on more than one occasion accusing the West of causing the droughts that were happening in Iran during the 2010s. And you also had General Wesley Clark, who came out and said there's going to be 7 countries in 5 years that the US is going to invade. Now, eventually, it didn't happen over the 5 years, but the US did get to pretty much every country on that list. And it just so happened that every single one of those countries that the US wanted to go to were suffering droughts as well. Those droughts will cause famine, they'll cause civil unrest, and there'll be great ways to help stoke the local population and get things going. Like you say, it's something that goes far beyond just local weather, but it might be a good moment to talk about HAARP and the usages of HAARP, and then from HAARP talk about cloud seeding as well, and how these two things can combine.
Well, HAARP is very important. And the first book that came out about HAARP was in 1995. Angels Don't Play This HAARP, with the acronym HAARP for the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project up in Gakona, Alaska. Now, this is an ionospheric heater. The ionospheric heater has been around longer than HAARP. HAARP was pretty much finished by the late 90s. And the weather program that I talk about as geoengineering, that comes from just now. I mean, we could go all the way back to World War I and talk about the chemical warfare in Europe, about the fact that that was the very first air war. And so you had all this combustion debris coming out of the planes. So the air, that it was an air war and not a ground war and not a sea war, because of course, before the ground wars, we had the sea wars of when Britain was #1 in the world. So you always have some sort of element in the natural earth that you have to deal with in your warfare. And from World War I, when the chemical giants, the corporations like IG Farben, we had IG Farben back that far, we had it in World War II, it gave birth to all sorts of the pharmaceutical corporations now. It's sort of the mother house of all of big pharma. They discovered in World War I, they can make a lot of money on wars now. And that is why the 20th century is just loaded with wars, but they're air wars. And everything has to do with the air. So this was when the West turned to look at the pharmaceutical aspects of the atmosphere and the upper atmosphere. This was before consideration of going to the moon and et cetera. I mean, there were always the Jules Verne ideas of going to Mars and then, going to all the planets and rocket ships, and we had all that. But that sort of gave birth to the HAARP ionospheric heater, because they realized early that they did not have control of the atmosphere. And we had a program back in the Reagan, Bush, George H.W. Bush, Dick Cheney, 80s here in the United States. It was very aggressive, very warlike. All these guys were into war. It was the SDI program, Strategic Defense Initiative, and they sold it as a way to defend against incoming missiles. But that's not what it was really about. It was really about kind of the space program, the secret space program that actually began back in, I would say, in the late 30s during the European War. And we had, I know we brought Werner von Braun, the SS card-carrying Nazi astrophysicist.
Operation Paperclip. Yeah.
Yeah, well, before Paperclip. We brought him over in 1937 to start planning the secret space program from America. So they already knew that they were going to bring the Paperclip Nazis over here when they sold it as the war having been lost by the Nazis, which I do not believe they did lose the war. They actually just transferred over here. And all their records were washed, and they were given carte blanche in all our missile bases, our universities, our hospitals, everything. And they began, as we know, MK Ultra, which is, was an incredibly sophisticated mind control program of 149 sub-projects. And yet they also began the secret space program that Catherine Austin Fitts, who is a financial advisor.
She was also in George Bush's cabinet, right? If I remember.
Yes, she was. She was deputy secretary of HUD, the Housing and Urban Development.
Yeah.
And she, while she was there, being a very honest person, I know her a bit. She actually blew the whistle on some criminal activity going on in the Bush administration. There was certainly a lot of criminal activity going on in that administration. And she paid heavily for that. I think her house was burned down. Her money was assaulted. And so she learned quite early that
this is what happens when you speak out. Yeah.
Yes, this is what happens. And so subsequently, she and a lawyer friend of hers named Mark Skidmore went through the documentation behind the missing $21 trillion from the American budget. I mean, that's quite a handful. And discovered that it probably had been consumed by the secret space program. And so I always like to make it clear to people that my way of looking at the geoengineering, is that it is part and parcel of the secret space program. And that's a secret space program. It's still going on.
I think we've gone a way further off field just yet, though. Let's come back to HAARP itself. How is it that HAARP is used as part of this?
Well, HAARP is essential. It's essential because they did, as I said, they did not have control even over the atmosphere.
No.
The upper or the lower.
So how does HAARP give them that?
HAARP comes in and it has an ability to magnify its power because it's up there in the natural gas fields of Alaska. So it's unlimited natural gas. And what they did is they built HAARP, and this is where Billy Hayes comes in. Billy Hayes is known as the HAARP man. Why? Because he was one of the people, he was an MK Ultra survivor. He had been raised and owned by the CIA since he was a child. They ran his education. They programmed him with electromagnetics and all the things they would need for a team leader to be able to lead teams to 240 military bases around the world and build things like HAARP, build these transformers, these transmitters, so that they would be completely phased array antennas. And the beauty of the phased array antenna, if you own a cell phone, which I don't, I refuse to own one because it's a weapon system. Inside the cell phone is a phased array antenna system. And so on a very large scale, just consider the one, if you ever look at a picture of HAARP, it's a very pretty sight to see it up there with the mountain over it and the snow, and
that's the image I've got in my head.
Nice. All those antennas, and those are all phased array. And the advantage of them is not only can you get a lot of juice out of them, but you can instead of the old antenna, which was a sort of rotating kind of antenna, and you'd get a lot of loss. It was not efficient forming kind of system, but the phased array is a beam forming system. So you take all those small antennas and you get them all into one wave, one beam, and then you can project it. So that's what they did with HAARP. They projected it onto the ionosphere. They poked into the ionosphere and basically took it entirely over. And so I can honestly say, and there's a video that takes place in the Alaska Senate, in which the Air Force is there to tell the senators gathered there that, yes, we do control the ionosphere. And that was the whole purpose of HAARP. It was not submarine communication, as was the cover story for that project. But no, we now have total control over the ionosphere. And what that means is you have a weapon of choice that, just cannot be beaten, because you can bounce signals off of the ionosphere, and the ionosphere inside it, and it's sort of around our entire planet. There's the ionosphere, and that's above our upper atmosphere. And then above that is the magnetosphere. And that one, the magnetosphere, is pretty much, I won't say run by, but certainly influenced heavily by CERN, which is on the border between Switzerland and France, and works in sync with the HAARP system. So with the ions coming from the ionosphere, and we can draw those down into our atmosphere. And now we have something. But for the ionizing of the atmosphere, you can't have just air. You've got to have the air pregnant with particulates. And that's where the nanoparticles come in.
Yeah, you need a medium to carry the charge, essentially.
You do. You need a medium. Exactly. And so we have the jets flying, and we have the drones and the rocket launches as well, the sounding rockets. You get a lot of debris, but it's primarily on a nano scale. So a nano is 1/1000th of a meter, very tiny, but you have trillions and trillions and trillions of them. And so the air gets, our air that we're breathing, and we've depended on for millions of years, is now loaded with this stuff. So they take advantage. It's not just for dosing, it's a military term, dosing the atmosphere and keeping it, as you said, so that it can transfer these, all the ionization, keep it all intact so that we can have wireless transmissions. But it's also to keep it so that they can utilize it as a means of transfer of all sorts of things for us to breathe and all creatures to breathe. And beyond that, to fall into the soil and feed the soil with basically combustible and conductive metals, because that's the largest part of what's coming down on us is really metals. And that's aluminum, barium, strontium, chromium, lithium, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
From my understanding, one of the ways that we can confirm this is looking at soil samples. And like you said, we have these metals falling to earth, and some of these metals aren't found on their own naturally, like aluminium. It's normally bonded. So when we look at soil samples, and when we have a control sample that goes back many years, we find elevated amounts of aluminium, where one, there shouldn't have been any, and two, it's on the rise decade by decade. So this is one of the ways in which, and it's very easily checked as well, that people like Dane Wigington from Geoengineering Watch have looked at and proven that something is going on here. You have Kristen Megan, a former industrial hygienist for the US Air Force, who's also taken soil samples and whatnot and looked into this deeper and been able to prove and show that, hey guys, there's something going on here. What is it? Why do we have these chemicals? Where are they coming from? What is it that can make this more tangible for people then? How can people recognize that this is going on around them? Because we've mentioned HAARP. We've mentioned very briefly that there's jets and drones and rockets going up above us. What is it that can make it more tangible to the everyday person who's still not yet able to comprehend what's happening?
You don't want me to talk about the weapon that HAARP is? You want me to?
We'll get to the weapon bit. Yeah, we'll get to the weapon bit, but let's try and make it a bit more tangible, as I feel like it's still a bit nebulous for people.
Well, it is nebulous unless you realize that you're breathing this air, and it's in our lungs, it's in our blood, it's in it goes beyond the blood-brain barrier because it's all full of nano sized metals.
Nanofibers as well have been discovered in the blood. Yeah.
So to me, I don't know, this may sound too simplistic, but the health of the average American has gone down the tubes pretty much over the last 20 to 30 years. And part of that you can blame on junk food. And part of it you can blame on just sheer the idea of pollution, which we've had since the 70s. They really sold us on the idea of pollution. And now, of course, we're told that it's, that we're breathing carbons, et cetera. And that's why we have, the carbon sequestering going on, blah, blah, blah. But it really, to me, it shows in the endless respiratory and nervous system problems. We have such a deep dishealth now that we're not real, because it's so tiny, you're not understanding that you're constantly breathing these things. And I haven't even begun to describe the array of things, because mainly the thing that I'm most concerned about are the nanobots, which are nanorobots. And they have tiny, tiny, tiny computers in them that are being communicated with. And your mind control, we don't need MK Ultra in the clinical or hospital setting anymore. It can all happen through a remote use of directed energy weapons to program our nanobots already in our bodies and in our brains remotely. And I find this to be, before the jab happened, I found this to be the most compelling part of the final objective of the HAARP system, was not just to, despoil the earth and all the natural systems with all this crap coming down. It really was, there was a method in the madness to completely take over the brain. And of course, HAARP, one of the things it does, which seems very minor to, unless you understand what pulsing frequency can do, but it is primarily pulsing frequencies that have completely changed our ability to use our brains over the last 20 years. So I find that to be, if you have trouble remembering, and you have now earlier and earlier Alzheimer's in your family, or you have autism in your children, well, you're talking HAARP. You're talking what's coming down from what's being released, and you're talking about pulse frequencies. That's the key.
Part of the autism thing can also be related back to the jabs, though, right? Because again,
that's very recent. That's very recent. Or you mean the vaccinations of children?
Yeah.
Well, they have aluminum in the vaccines.
Exactly. There's the metals going into the vaccine. So,
but what isn't known is that you also are breathing aluminum oxide. I mean, aluminum oxide is the primary metal that they're using because it's cheap. It has 4 times the surface area of all the other metals, and it's light. It'll come down very lightly. But
by that you mean it stays suspended in the air for longer, right?
It does.
Yeah,
it does. And then when it falls to the earth, it very nicely compacts into the soil as a combustible. This is something Billy Hayes was very clear on. He said that these metals are not, it's not just that metals are bad for us. It's that they can be used as combustibles, which means like what happened in Maui. In Maui, I'm convinced that the soil, if I could go over there and examine it, chemically examine it, and see that it had a high amount of aluminum. And then my guess is that they also drifted down the 3 days in advance of what happened there on August 8th, is they also delivered a combustible as well that would help when the microwaves came down from above and ignited all those fires.
Because that was a direct energy weapon as well, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So before we go on the DEWs, why don't we then backtrack to what you mentioned before about HAARP being a weapon?
I just wanted to make sure people understand that there's HAARP, and I call it a HAARP system because mostly all of these ionospheric heaters are in the northern hemisphere, which is interesting. The northern hemisphere, if you study history, which I have, is the northern hemisphere primarily runs the world, not the southern hemisphere. We get all our food from the southern hemisphere, but really the northern hemisphere has been dominant for thousands of years. So these ionospheric heaters, there's one right away, I think, in Norway, Tromsø. There was one in Puerto Rico. It fell apart very nicely. I don't know what is there now. I haven't heard anything, that doesn't mean there isn't something. And then, there are different ones. There's one in Russia, and they're all around. And then now, since they got the big HAARP to control the ionosphere and control the jet stream, now they've got smaller HAARPs. You can call them smaller ionosphere keyers. You can put them on oil rigs, ships. They're smaller, but they still have the same system, the same phased array thing, etc. So if you want to target, say, you want to send an earthquake to Iran. So to do that, you will use the ionosphere, and you'll use the ability of two HAARPs, two HAARP-like phased array antenna systems, and you'll hit the ionosphere in such a way that when it angles off, when the beam angles off, it'll be over Iran. But you're going to have to make sure that those beams cross. And it's known as interferometry. It's a real science. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you've got the beams crossing over that area, then you ignite it, you boom, and you can do that in a variety of ways. So this ability to cross beams, and say you want a hologram in the sky, you'll need 3 beams. So this is a tremendous weapon, this HAARP system, on a variety of levels. If you see my meaning, we can talk about how it broadcasts these pulses and frequencies. You can talk about how it can even do an interferometry over an individual target. Say you want to take some leader out, you can use it for that. So it's very versatile and very powerful.
It's also thought within certain circles that even the tsunami in Fukushima, and was it the Indonesian tsunami in the 2000s, were also potentially HAARP activated events, whereby, like you say, it's kind of like when you're playing pool and you're trying to bounce a ball off the cushions, right? That's what they're doing with the HAARP signals. They get 2 of those signals going, or more, depending on what the target is, what kind of effect they want to have. And then you can cause earthquakes underground, or you can cause the tsunamis, whatever you want.
That's right.
Now, with that being said, then, who in their right mind is doing this? And why are they doing this? I know we've briefly touched onto a little bit of the why with the transhumanism, and you've briefly touched on a little bit of the who. But can you maybe dig a little deeper on the who's and the whys of this? Because it sounds like quite scary technology. And, we've outlined the fact that it's been used before for warfare. And we've outlined the fact that it has clear applications for things that, although haven't been admitted, for me, for all intents and purposes, the fire in Maui certainly looks like it. The fact that, okay, it's a bit chilly tonight, but if I was to walk outside and shine my flashlight up in the air, there's all this almost dust-like particulate matter in the air.
Smart dust, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So who is doing this and why?
Well, I think it's obvious that it's power. And as far as who runs it, I've studied it now for 13 years, and I'd have to say that certainly NASA and NOAA are just handmaidens, as is the
NOAA.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what the acronym stands for, or I don't have it memorized. NOAA. It works hand in glove with NASA. So they're involved, but they're just handmaidens. They serve it. So who makes the decisions? I would say it's the elite that we're now at war with, regarding the elites that run the World Health Organization, the elites who run the United Nations, the elites who have I don't mean even the Bill Gates level of elites. I mean elites that, did you know I was a student of Rudolf Steiner, by the way?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I can dip into that for a moment. Occultists who very much have plans for the earth in general. And they're not interested in owning more money. They own far more money than we can imagine. They can take land. I mean, that's what's happening in Maui. It's one level of what's going on there is it's a land deal. And they're taking it back, just as they did in California with the fires there. But I think, generally speaking, the U.S. military is obeying this thrust that you can see now, because the Klaus Schwab group, the WTO, are not doing too well right now, in my opinion. I watch all this stuff carefully.
The WEF, sorry, the World Economic Forum, those guys.
WEF, yeah,
yeah, WEF, yeah.
All these W's, right?
Yeah.
They're not doing so well, so they're amping up the climate change agenda. Now, this storm in Istanbul that is really looking, it's going to drown. I don't know how many, if the entire city may go. So this is the new warfare, the use of weather for warfare, because you can always claim it's an act of God. And so to me, to have power on that level, it's not just the United States. The United States is indeed where all of this is sort of fomented and set in motion. That's sort of what the United States is used for in this cabal, that overarching occult cabal that has agendas that you and I have never even read in the most mystical history books we can find. So this is all taking place on multiple levels, and I remember when Trump was in office, I knew he had been chosen by the military brass to defeat Hillary Clinton, but I didn't know what kind of a man he was, or how much power he actually had. And when he got in office, one of the things I watched for very closely was, will he take the wrong finger on the button of geoengineering? Will he remove that finger? And then we could have geoengineering. Just imagine it as something maybe has some good things to do with it, not just war things. And that's always what I watch for is, is there another power that can come in and overrule
it and change the
whatever, whoever these people are, because these people just have unlimited power. And so that's what I've decided. And do I have any proof? No, but I have some backup. There's a wonderful, let me just get this for you.
While you're getting that, one of the things that you mentioned with the US almost being used by the cabal, one of the beautiful ways that I've heard this put is the UK is sort of the financial arm of this, the US is the military arm of it, and the Vatican is the cabal leader, spiritual aspect of it. Nothing to do with Christianity, but that deeper layer, that Satanism that's going on in the background, that kind of element of things there is what the Vatican is in charge of. So you've got these three different pillars. From my understanding, you've got things like Freemasonry that go into it.
I think historically it was that, but I think it's a little different now. The Vatican is losing power. It definitely is losing power, but no, that'll do fine. Here in America, our entire country is run by Freemasons, as is Britain. And so, you have to deal with these secret societies that John Kennedy warned us of just a few months before he was killed. Well, this was printed in The Guardian in UK, and it was back in 2015. it was during that period when we were having all these meetings in New York for passing the carbon's way to get money from nations by guilt tripping them that they're responsible for the climate change, et cetera, right? So this is Matt Anderson, and he was at that time, well, he's former executive advisor, aerospace and defense of Booz Allen Hamilton out of Chicago. Now that was a very powerful defense contractor, right? This is the military industrial complex.
Between them, and Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, that's the three
now
big ones, right?
They were the three big, and now there's only these two, and then Booz Allen is less. But he said in 2012, February 9, few in the civil sector fully understand that geoengineering is primarily a military science and has nothing to do with either cooling the planet or lowering carbon emissions. While seemingly fantastical, weather has been weaponized. At least 4 countries, the US, Russia, China, and Israel, possess the technology and organization to regularly alter weather and geologic events for various military and Black operations, which are tied to secondary objectives, including demographic, energy, agricultural, etc. Indeed, warfare now includes the technological ability to induce, enhance, or direct cyclonic events, earthquakes, drought, and flooding, including the use of polymerized aerosol viral agents and radioactive particulates carried through global weather systems. Various themes in public debate, including global warming, have unfortunately been subsumed into much larger military and commercial objectives that have nothing to do with broad public environmental concerns. These include the gradual warming of polar regions to facilitate naval navigation and resource extraction. I mean,
is he still alive?
Huh?
Is he still alive? Because that's a lot of tea being spilled right there. He's let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah, he said that in 2012, and it was printed, and you didn't hear a peep anywhere. Didn't hear a peep.
Unfathomable.
So anyway, he backs me up.
I think both you and he have both said that, and it's important to emphasize that the climate change narrative that we have today, it's an excuse to cover up for the things that they have already done. This notion that we can cool the planet through things like solar radiation management. For those that don't know what solar radiation management is, it is that element of cloud seeding where they produce a thin layer. If you go outside in the morning and you expect a clear day and you see those grid lines across your sky, watch what happens as those chemtrails, not contrails, chemtrails will expand. And it would look like if you had sand on your table and you lined it up and then you blew over the sand, and the way that sand would spread, it's a similar sort of thing that happens with that cloud coverage. Then you get this thin hazy cloud. It's not like something that I would have seen when I was little. And I know even when I was little, 20 something odd years ago, the clouds that I was seeing are going to be different to what they were when you were younger, Elana, because this has been going on for such a long time, right? I think probably best bet to maybe see proper clouds is to head up to the mountains. I saw some pictures of a friend who was up on a skiing retreat, and the sky looked completely different. The deep blue, I've never seen.
Deep blue.
Never seen a day in my life. So that's important to emphasize. These things that we're being told that are being done in the name of the climate are absolutely not what's really going on.
They're lies.
Yeah.
They're absolute lies.
And this idea that the climate is changing and the world is coming to an end, it's all controlled in the sense of someone up there is pushing buttons or letting the AI take over to make sure the right buttons are being pushed at the right time in order to create the illusion of catastrophe and disaster, so that the common man, the populace, goes along with the lies and the deceit, just like we've been conditioned to do in the last, 3 years with the whole COVID malarkey. Sorry, Do continue. You were saying.
Well, no, I'm ready to move on to the latest, which is the connection between geoengineering and the synthetic biology. I think it's important. See, there are 7 operations, and Clifford Carnicom, the independent scientist that I've worked with and who now is completely
Vindicated.
Vindicated is the word. Thank you. That's the word I wanted. Because what he was saying for years, and I still remember when he would be putting everything up in papers on his site, and he'd be out there collecting detritus from the jets passing over northern New Mexico through the, at that point, still really beautiful azure blue sky, really, really deep blue sky. And then down would come this stuff, and then this plasma cloud cover, because that's what it's made of. It's plasma because of the electromagnetics that they're using to move the weather systems, create the low pressures, the high pressures, all of it. And then he would look, examine it all, particularly in a low budget. He didn't have all the big fancy contraptions that the government has. And he would examine it chemically primarily in order to see what was in it. And it really shocked him. That was the beginning of realizing that the entire planet was being changed, particularly the atmosphere. That was very obvious, that the atmosphere we have now and that you've had all your life is not at all the atmosphere that we used to have. One thing, just as an example, we have 16% less oxygen in the atmosphere now than we used to have. And that would go for our bodies as well. We have much less oxygen available to us now in our bodies. And that makes sense if you're thinking transhumanism, because they don't particularly want a human 1.0 anymore, the natural one of Mother Nature. So that one is slated to be changed. And that's why it was such a surprise when suddenly, boom, here comes this vaccination, so-called, and people are lining up like lemmings. And I realized that this was the proof in the pudding of the mind control that has been set up by the smart grid that I wrote about in the second book. In the second book, Under an Ionized Sky, came out in 2018, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. I talk about the space fence, and that patent belongs to Lockheed Martin. And we had a space fence before under the SDI, Strategic Defense Initiative, but it was very minimal. It was minimal because, again, reminding you how I said, we didn't have control of the atmosphere. And they knew that if they were going to push and move this forward to where they wanted it for a transhuman race, that they had to have control over the atmosphere. So that's where HAARP came in. Then when they finally were able to establish the space fence, and that included building some new contraptions down in the South Pacific, but mainly it was the ionizing of the atmosphere that you and I can't see because our eyes in the electromagnetic spectrum, you know how narrow our point of vision is. We can hardly see anything. But the atmosphere, if we could see it, is really a grid now. And it's completely electrified. It's not etheric in hardly any way, shape, or form anymore, which is a Rudolf Steiner word, perhaps, for people, but it has to do with ether. And we used to have ether as part of our science vocabulary up until the 1920s, and then it was removed. And it was removed for good reason. They did not want people to know that we are anything more than electromagnetic beings and biological. And so now the space fence, we call it the smart grid. And you can't, we know you can't see it but we know we're surrounded by waves. We know that the Internet of Things is partially part of it. We know that, you know, these the towers that we depend on for the cell phones, et cetera. All of this has created a huge stew of electromagnetism that we now live our lives in. And so we're having all sorts of symptoms about that. Our children are having symptoms. Our children are cut off from nature. Nature is becoming less and less important to people as we, you know, zero in on our electromagnetics and our so-called communication. So the space fence is a huge, huge change. And Billy Hayes explains it all to me, and then I write it in the second book. That's really what it is. And I thanked him profusely. I could not have done it without him because he understood all that technology, because he was programmed in it by the MK Ultra doctors. So that's important to understand what's happening with the nanotechnology now that we have breathed in from the air. That's all this stuff is being dropped on us thanks to big pharma's agreements with the medical industry, with the certain parts of the military, intelligence agents, etc. It's all, as Matt Anderson says, it's all a big military thing, and they're doing it all in front of us, but we can't see it. We can't recognize anything because none of their scientists are talking about it, because they've all signed NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and or they've been threatened. Their careers have been threatened, their families have been threatened, etc. So this is why I call it the big elephant in the living room. If we didn't have this, this is the big thing that all of the rest of it is part of, in a sort of concert of the takeover of planet Earth and transhumanism. I mean, it's not just another thing Elana's giving us to worry about. No, it's not another thing. It's the thing. It's the thing.
It's the thing in the middle of the spider's web that connects everything else that's been happening.
That they never mention.
If for those listening who might be unfamiliar with some of these concepts, so the transhumanism being the big one there in what you just said, if anyone reads Yuval Noah Harari's latest book, I think it is, he specifically talks about transhumanism and the evolution of man, and how he wants there to be Sapiens 4.0, essentially, where technology is directly implemented within us. You've got Sapiens 2.0 and 3.0, where we're looking at people who have limbs, for example, and then 4.0, so cyborg arm or something like that. And then you have 4.0, where it's essentially what Elon Musk is working on with I forget the name of the chip that he's working on for the brain, but essentially
he's doing the neural mesh.
That's it.
The neural mesh. Yeah. The neural mesh is a done deal. He's not working on it. Forget it. It's already a done deal. Yeah. It's in all of us. It's in all of us, because the hydrogel that is in the vax.
Yep.
Yes, the people who've been vaxxed have much more than we do. They have the graphene oxide. They have the hydrogel. They have all the quantum dots in them. But we are now, we who are unvaccinated, and I am unvaccinated, are experiencing the same thing. I mean, this is the real shedding. And it's not happening from a virus infection. No, it's not about viruses at all. It's about the electromagnetics. All those people are on a leash. All those people who constitute the first generation of transhumanism. That's who they are. Now, maybe not all of them, because not all the batches of serum were the same. They all had different connections.
Different end goals for each one.
The transhumans have all those things in them. And I, being in the world that is all electromagnetic now, and I'm surrounded by it, even though I ameliorate it in my own living situation. I own next to nothing that's electromagnetic other than my computer. So this we are subject to it as well because it travels by the air. It's coming down from the sky. It's being delivered to us by Big Pharma. So we're being sandwiched between the inoculation and what's coming down from the aerosols. And this is why they're now putting all of it in the food, all the foods that the live blood analysis group I'm a member of, where they're looking through their very high sophisticated microscopes at what is in live human blood and dried human blood. And then they're branching off now to see what's in some of the medicinals that people are taking from their doctors, what's in the anesthetics used at the dentist, what's in the insulin of diabetics. It's all impregnated by the same things in the CV19 inoculation serum. You get my picture here. This is a takeover of synthetic biology, using synthetic biology to turn us into semi-cyborgs, total cyborgs, whatever you want to call it, but it is the beginning, the advent of transhumanism, one way or another.
So, what is then the end goal? We've mentioned the essential terraforming of the planet in order to enable the usage of the electromagnetic spectrum to the nth degree that's wanted to develop this control element. You've also said that these guys don't want money. It's not money that they're after. They already control everything anyway. They don't need to have a few extra dollars in their account. So what is the goal once the transhumanism transfer is complete?
It has to do with the fact that they've turned everyone in my nation, and I've lived in England, so I know what England is like, and England, it turned all of the West into materialists, right?
Yep.
We're all materialists.
Consumer capitalism.
Now I have an inner life through my studies in Rudolf Steiner. So I have saved my soul in some ways that the common materialists like Mr. Harari, I would go further and say that he is a bit of a Satanist as well. But when he says that now we're going to have surveillance under the skin, I thank him for saying it boldly and with no apology and not needing to explain anything, because he's right. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That has now, we have breathed in. We have an entire surveillance computer system in us that can be activated remotely for a variety of purposes. So the under the skin, which he said, by the way, with a bit of a smile. I could tell he was very happy about this.
Toothy grin.
And so we are now entering another phase, and people think that they can take these people to court, that you can get them to face justice. Well, if they're occultists, they have a very different objective that most people would not even imagine could be fulfilling. And it has to do with sort of thumbing their nose at God, the last vestiges of God, wherever that might still exist in this materialistic time. But at the same time, they want to be as gods. And yet they want to, the way they do it, and I'm sure you've noticed this, is they copy everything that nature has produced, right? Everything really has something to do with nature and the way nature works. And then they either invert it or they change it a little bit. And it is quite clever. I have to admit, it's quite clever. Like
hats off to them. They've done so well in getting all of this to work. And no, absolutely. Yes. It's taken some doing. Yeah.
It's not at all on the scale of God, of what a creator being can really do. It's kind of amusing if it weren't so dire, if there weren't so much suffering awaiting us. And when I realized that they literally, and you hear this in Mr. Harari, they literally don't want humans to exist at all. At all. They don't want that free will nonsense. They don't want that soul nonsense. They don't want that spirit nonsense. They want absolute full spectrum dominance control over the soul of the human being. Now that's where I get a little testy, because I know we have souls. I know we are spiritual beings. I know that we are high spiritual beings, and that we incarnate into this realm of materialism in order to do something that even the angels have not been able to do. We enter full-on meat bodies, and we have this brilliant mechanism in the body which has sort of a computer side to it, an ability that someone could actually take us over in our brain, particularly. So, we are vulnerable. We are very vulnerable. That's why we've created systems of law, is in order to take the burden off of us so that we can develop the true free will of the human soul. And we have an evolutionary path, according to Rudolf Steiner. And that evolutionary path has many, many helpers from the spiritual world. From the side of reality, I might add that our masters in the West have removed from us as being at all important to true science, which is nonsense. All the scientists of the past, and Newton may have been the very last of a certain breed, all of them had a spiritual life, all of them. And then they were scientists. They were very clear. Now everything's mishmash, everything's a mess, and people don't know what they are anymore. So you ask what they could possibly gain other than power, which is quite an aphrodisiac for many low caste souls. But there is that which would be where they could actually take the work of God, the most beautiful human soul and human being in a body that meets the needs of this planet of dualism. They could take that and turn it gradually over time, take the veins, or take the nerves in the nervous system and make them graphene oxide. That's the key. That's what they're doing. That's why it was in the inoculation. That's why it's coming down on us from space. The graphene oxide is essential to that.
Desecrate the human body.
Well, not to desecrate, to take the place of the nerves. We will not have the nerves that we have now if they have their way. We will have very much cybernetic nerves.
So, okay. There's a lot that we've covered there, from right there at the end with the cybernetic nerves, going back to the original steps of the transhumanism. Is there anything there then that people can latch onto or people can see? So are there patents for any of this stuff, whether elements of the transhumanism that people could potentially look up and see, hey, wait, okay, there are chips here, or there are bits and bobs here that are supposed to be, it's not self-replicating, self-assembling.
Well, self-replicating and self-assembling.
Yeah.
No, that's the point of the books. I mean, I can't go around with memorized
patent numbers, but there are patents out there. There is tech out there.
There are hundreds. They have been prepping for this for many years. And the thing is, the person, the normal person, the person who is paying a mortgage, going to a job 8-9 hours a day, has children to raise, etc. What kind of time do they have to do real research, to go deeply into these things in order to see how they work. I mean, it's very difficult. I have a lot of compassion for people because now I'm retired. I was not able to give my entire life to the writing until I had raised my children. I had to wait until I could really plunge in. And now I'm just, I'm a big happy camper because I can devote all my time to this. So I try to lay things out for people so that they can see the most important things. And that's what the books are for. They're for references. They're not just to sit, in a cozy corner and read. You can look things up. You can use the index. You can, that sort of thing.
That's
but
why
yes,
I have them. And that's why I wanted to speak to you, because they are amazing books. And this is why I was more specific with the question of the patents and stuff. Because again, we talk about it because one, I've read your books, two, much like yourself, I've also dived into this. So we have that base understanding. But there are going to be people that are listening to this that are going to say, these two have lost the plot. They've gone to the land of the fairies. They're talking about transhumanism. What kind of nonsense is this? But the tech exists. It's out there. And okay, a fair argument to that could be that just because there's a patent doesn't necessarily mean that there is a viable product out there. Fair. I will accept that argument. But then I will say, okay, you're right. There is a patent out there. There's no it's not necessary that the patent is in use. However, all of the building blocks to said patent are out there.
Yeah.
There is a very small gap to jump for that. It is not a leap of faith. It's a step over a crack to put two and two together for me.
Right. And I would have to, at this point, since you've reminded me, it's very important for people to hear me say that the most dangerous invention, I think, to date, if I were to weigh all the things I know, is nanotechnology. It is the most dangerous because if I am right, and all these papers that I've read, and we are loaded with this nanotechnology. I know for a fact that one of the things we're loaded with is nanosensors. Nanosensors are released generally in the stratosphere, the upper atmosphere. And then they by the trillions, by the way, released to pick up data, take it in, transmit it to maybe the data center in Utah or wherever it is, to get that down to some data crunching supercomputer or even quantum computer. But we also breathe in a lot of these nanosensors, and they are taking our biometrics, and they're taking our blood pressure, and they're taking all these, and that's all being transmitted. And that's where the ability to, that we're all sort of one in this, the inoculated and the non-inoculated, is that we are in this big data crunching nanosensor world now. I understand it's throughout the smart cities. It's in the sidewalks. It's in the walls. It's in everything. It's everywhere. It's found. I mean, I'm sure they're in the uterus. They're in everything. None of this was tested before it was released. This was released. A lot of the nanotech was released in the early 90s, and yet it was pretty much discovered by the mid 1970s. And so if we understand that it's all been released and we're all in it, and it's talking to us, we're not aware of it talking to us, but we will be, the more cybernetic we become, because it's already begun. It's not a matter of using the future tense. The ability to control the human. Certainly, I have met many people now, especially since the vax, I have to say, who seem not the same anymore. and they are different, and they are more machine-like, I would have to say. That sensitive human being is vanishing. And, when I think of, I had a liberal arts education, the real deal. Now it's been expunged from Harvard, from Yale, it's gone. It's gone. All of the liberal arts curriculum is gone. It made me more sensitive. Yeah, it was European. Yeah, it was the white man. But it was something that sensitized my soul. And there was the poetry. This weekend I was able to read some poetry, just to take the time, because I don't really allow myself much time reading other things than science. But I just love to be in that world. I love that world. And I know, a lot of people would criticize it. Certainly Marxists would criticize it. But that part of the human soul that is sensitive seems to be being stamped out. And I really, when my generation is gone, then will it ever come again? Will a generation come again that was, I don't want to say superior. It's not a matter of superior, inferior. It's a matter of a certain quality of soul that seems to be no more. And I simply do not meet it except in people that are around my age. It's really interesting. And I think that's it, is the school curriculum is more than just facts and figures. It's actually an experience of knowledge, and the way you take knowledge in, and what kind of knowledge you are taking in as knowledge.
We're being encouraged more and more so to be quite clinical and quite sterile. And this is also pushing people away from being sensitive to their fellow person. It's something that I see within the medical field really rapidly occurring. I have students now that can quote me facts and figures, but can't necessarily connect to the patient in front of them. It's really a little bit bizarre, or they lack some of the basic fundamentals in the job that we're doing. And it really baffles me to see that disconnect that's being encouraged by the curriculum. I think, there's also something to be said that an element of this is also this Marxist critical race, critical gender theory that's also being pushed through the school system. It's being pushed through onto the next generations to, again, further separate them out. And how do you take over a nation? You subvert the ideology, right? It's the old Yuri Bezmenov of, we go to your schools. We don't need to go for the older generations. No. We'll get our goals met in 2 or 3 generations' time by teaching this rubbish to the kids and getting them to buy into it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
What can we do then in order to protect ourselves? Because, like you say, this is coming down in the air around us, and we live. I'm 32 years old. I grew up with computers. I've got a phone. I have de-Googled it, that being said, right? So I've done something to try to break away a little bit from the ecosystem that I was in. But what is it that we can then do to try to protect ourselves? Because short of walking around everywhere with the Michael Jackson style umbrella from the sunlight, there's not a lot we can do. We know masks don't work. So what is there?
For me, I'm constantly beseeching people to protect their humanity in whatever way works for them. I mean, will the day come, and maybe it already has, and I'm in denial, that I say that to someone who has no idea what I mean by human. I mean, if you look at humans, you'll see a lot of bad ones, and I hear that a lot. You know, all politicians are crooked. Politics doesn't matter. So people have withdrawn from leadership, from questioning, from coming forward with what they have to say. For me, if I think of Christ definitely as a human being, Jesus Christ, and you see how he conducted himself. I see. I met John Kennedy when I was 16 in the Rose Garden because I was at Girls Nation. And Bill Clinton was there, but I didn't know him, but he referred to it often. And Kennedy at one point mentioned in passing that I looked like his wife. And I did look a lot like Jacqueline Kennedy at that time with my wide jaw. And it was a huge experience. I had the feeling, an overwhelming feeling, but I didn't value it at that point at 16, that I had somehow known him before. He was familiar to me. You know, I mean, I don't know what that meant, but that was the feeling I had. And then when I returned to my home state, I was asked by the civic groups that had paid for my trip to Washington to give a talk about my day with Kennedy. And then I had to go back 3 months later when he was murdered in Dallas. And I had to give a talk in a room full of sobbing Americans. So I think that was the beginning of my understanding of the various qualities. Not to say that he was any sort of saint. Of course he wasn't. But everyone I met that I had admiration for had a quality that I called human. And I think that people who steal and murder and lie consistently have lost their humanity. They don't have it anymore. Now, that's my assumption. No one gave me some sort of certificate when I was born that said, you know, this is what a human being is, this is what a human being is not. I learned all that through my own
experience. Yeah. It's essentially that, right? You know, if you're only worrying about yourself or you're trying to keep yourself separate, you're never going to be appreciated in that way. You're not going to be a good human being. Being a good human being is something that's a step further, doing more for the society around you, not just for your individual self.
From inside. And I think there are times when you're going to have to stand in the public and you're going to be despised. I certainly have been. And it was not a matter of the quality of my integrity. It was a matter of the group mind being opposed.
Groupthink.
To what I stood for in that one situation. But, you know, you stand with your integrity. You stand with your conscience. If your conscience says, don't do this, I learned that early. Don't do this. And then I went ahead and did it, and everything was a mess. So that sort of thing, that remaining human, that's one thing we can do. Okay, now let's get very pragmatic. Look at your living situation. What is your electromagnetic footprint? Do you own a lot of toys that are electromagnetic? Do you have, for example, an Alexa answering all your phone calls, listening to all your conversations, making all your decisions to somebody somewhere who's recording all that and putting it on some computer somewhere? You know, that idea of your relationship with electromagnetics, to minimize it to the degree you can. Now, I don't own a cell phone and I don't own a television. I own this computer and I own some things like a printer But as far as anything communicating with me, I don't have Internet of Things refrigerator. I have some old refrigerator. So that's, make sure that your bedroom in particular has no electromagnetics in it. I mean, none, not even a clock radio. And certainly not a TV by which you can lie in bed and watch the telly or a video at night on your way to sleep. No, none of that in your bedroom. Why am I telling you this? Because I know how they're working at night to learn things about the human being. They're engineering people's dreams, my friends. They're in your bedroom. So pull all that stuff out. We're talking about a human life here. If you want a machine life, load up. Go ahead. Just give yourself to the technology and forget the human thing. But I'm not going to do that, because when I die, I'm going to slip under that door of death into the next life, where I will digest what I have learned here, this life, and prepare to come back so that I can fight the good fight one more time. That's what I'm going to be doing. And if you want to hang out around people like me, you're going to have to be like me. You're going to have to make the effort to be great. It's not that I am great, but I constantly make the effort to be a great human being, to be a worthy human being, to be a good human being, really good, so that I don't have evil thoughts. I don't treat people badly. I can stand my ground if I need to. Whatever is you admire in human beings, and you know that you have admired certain human beings, you have admired certain qualities, go after those. Not all the electromagnetic toys and looking good and big salary and nice car, and all of that does not matter when you're out of here. Believe me, does
Can't
not
take
matter
it with
in
you.
the least.
No.
Yeah. So that's the electromagnetic thing is very important. Then your food. Are you still eating out? Probably you don't want to do that, or do it to a minimum, because you don't know what's in that food. So start learning what's in your food, and maybe meeting the people who make it, maybe meeting the farmer who grows the meat that you eat, the vegetables that you eat, whatever. Become conscious in the things that you've thought really don't matter because you've got plenty of it coming through. But I don't know about the quality of what you've got coming through. And you need to keep this immune system. It's very ancient. It's probably millions of years old. And it has a certain spiritual intelligence. So treat it well, your immune system. I cook as much as I can. I'm now overweight. I suddenly looked at a friend's scale and went, oh, oops, I've been at the computer too long. So, whatever you need
Happens to the
do,
best of us.
whatever you need to do to keep this prime so that you're not a broken down old lady. You see, I'm not a broken down, I'm 76. Everything works, nothing hurts.
Still sharp as a tack. Yep.
Still sharp as a tack. You don't need to fall prey to Alzheimer's and bad health and joint problems and all that stuff that you've heard. No, that's if you go to Western medicine. I never go to Western medicine. I always do Eastern medicine. It's much wiser. Okay, so food, that's very important. And then your thoughts. If you feel, and it may happen to you, you feel that you have thoughts that are not really yours, that you don't think that way, you're not like that, then you may be picking up on a frequency moving through you, through the waves that we all live among, no matter how we protect ourselves. So make sure that you understand that's not going crazy. That's you perceiving that is not your thought, and you let it go. and you keep your thoughts as pure as you can, but in life, you're processing real life. We're not talking about being a monk here. Very important. And then finally, that leads right to your inner life. You must have an inner life. You must have something that that you love, that you respect, a philosophy, a religious book, a teacher, a mentor, whatever. Make sure you have an inner life, because what's going on out here, whether it's fame and glory or people who love you or whatever, it's not enough. You've got to have something going on inside that's between you and it. And I, of course, have that in spades, so that I am constantly fed and taken care of in that way. So those are my best. I think that if you do those things even badly, but you do them with intent, the intent is the important part. You will profit from it in the way that I consider to be profitable.
Beneficial, yeah. Even if you fail forwards with it.
Fail forward, right?
All right. I think that's really beautifully put. Look, Elana, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, and thank you for your fantastic books. Looking forward to the new one when it is out.
All right. Well, thank you for inviting me.
With that being said, where can people find out more about your work? Where can people find these books and whatnot?
Well, I have a website kept by my web mistress. She works for free, bless her heart. Her name, I won't tell her name. And that's at elanafreeland.com. It's a very beautiful site, and I'm grateful to her. And then for the books, for the third book, the one that I told you about, Geoengineered Transhumanism, for the color version, for the black and white version, you can get it on Amazon, evil Amazon. But for the color version, you would write to the Rudolf Steiner bookstore in Seattle, Washington, and that they will send it to you. They carry every book I've written.
Do they do international shipping as well?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And in England, you're not in England, you're in Amsterdam. In Amsterdam, you could get it in Dutch, but anyway, you can get it in English from the Watkins bookstore in London. They carry my books. And otherwise, I think that's all. Oh, and the other two books are available too at the Rudolf Steiner bookstore. Were you able to get them how did you get them?
It's essentially a Dutch equivalent of Amazon Bowl. I got those. And then what was really strange with it was the first book, the Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance.
Mm-hmm.
That took almost a month to arrive. And initially, when it was delayed, I got an email saying, it's taking longer than usual. Would you like to cancel the order? And I didn't get around to it because what I was thinking was, okay, then I'll just get it off of Amazon, no problem. Didn't get around to cancelling it. And then it turned up, what would have been then 3 weeks later without much of anything. But I thought that was quite bizarre with, like I say, essentially the Dutch equivalent of Amazon. That's not the kind of service that you'd normally get, or the approach that you'd normally get either. But yeah, no, that's another story. But thank you very much. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, but I want to tell you about one more thing I wrote.
Oh,
and that is the Sub Rosa America series.
Mm-hmm.
Very few people know about it. It has a cult following of probably a few hundred people. And that is, it's called Sub Rosa America, A Deep State History. And it is a very American kind of thing. It is a novel in 1,300 pages in 4 books. And it is about what has happened to America since John Kennedy's assassination. And it's quite wonderful writing. If I say so myself, I would say it is really well, yeah, it's the best thing I've written in a sense. But it's not about geoengineering, though it has geoengineering in it.
There you go. Always important.
All right. All right. Blessings. Thank you so much.